Get ready for an electrifying night of classical music as the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra presents Prokofiev's prowess. Guest pianist Ilya Yakushev brings fire and energy to Prokofiev's Piano Concerto No. 3. The night opens with the graceful wit of Mozart's Symphony No. 27 and closes with Bizet's joyful Symphony in C. Join the WCO on Friday, January 30th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are available at wcoconcerts.org/Prokofiev. Want to win the Madison Summer Camp Rush? Behold Wonder Palette Camp. The local creative art camp in Middleton at Sauk Trail Elementary is open for registration. Campers ages 6 to 12 will find an energetic and supportive environment to explore their creative passions. They offer 4 separate weeks of camp, each unique, and each week has 4 days of fun in the culinary arts, arts and crafts, theater, and dance. Register today at wonderpaletlecamp.com. This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, it's the Friday News Roundup, and we're talking about big leadership changes, protests, and voting rights. There is plenty to get into, so without delay, joining me is our executive producer, Haley Sperling. Hi, Haley.
Hi, Bianca. Big news this week. Big news every week.
Yes, and our newsletter editor, Rob Thomas. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Bianca.
Yeah, like as we were talking about before hopping on, we have never come to which stories we need to talk about so fast because we have some real big ones this week. Rob, you're kicking us off in the colors of cardinal red and white.
That's right. There's big news in Badgerland. We had some big news drop. Actually, the New York Times was the one who first told us that UW-Madison Chancellor Jennifer Mnookin would be accepting a position as president of Columbia University in New York. So we learned not from the UW, but from New York about that. Mnookin, who's been chancellor of the university since 2022, will leave Madison at the end of the school year after commencement in May to go to New York. Then she'll start at Columbia on July 1st. And if you're wondering why, she should get a pretty sizable pay bump. Her most recent salary at the UW was just over $1 million per year. And the last president of Columbia made more than $5 million annually. And I know New York is more expensive, but I don't know if it's 5 times more expensive than Madison. So I don't know, were you guys surprised to hear that she was leaving?
No, to be frank, like I don't think she ever really seemed fully in it. Like kind of reflecting back on this, I'm getting Sean Barnes vibes, a.k.a. our former Madison police chief, who you guys will know is now the police chief over in Seattle. Like, we saw him applying for jobs while he was in leading our police department. While we didn't see that with Jennifer, she just never, at least from my perspective, came out to be that, like, public figure that the chancellor of UW-Madison has historically been, right? Like, you know, she's attending graduations and speaking at the events, but she never really stuck out in any sort of way. And I don't think she wanted to. She just, again, my perspective, she never really seemed fully in it.
Yeah, like, who is she?
Right.
And that was one of the things we, never got an interview. We frequently would be like, well, what is she going to say? She's behind these doors. Like, are people even able to access her? And also, I looked at her background and where, she came from. She was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She went to Harvard, Yale. She grew up in the Bay Area. And, now it's kind of like you can take the girl out of the coast and those really high impact cities, but can you take the coast out of the girl? I don't know, but it certainly seems like she's going for a very visible high-impact university, as Columbia has been in the news so much, and is a fascinating choice.
Well, also, too, just like doubling down on what you said, Bianca, like, again, not a public figure. We asked her to be on the show more than once. I know, having worked as, an advisor with some of the student newspapers here, they really struggled to get any sort of statement, to get in touch with her office. I understand that part of that is very political. She's walking a very fine line. It's not an easy job in any way. But again, when your students want to talk to you, that should be a priority.
Yeah. I mean, you compare her to Becky Blank, the late Becky Blank, who, obviously was not without criticism because that's part of the job of being chancellor, but was a much more identified publicly with the UW-Madison and, was certainly beloved, I think. Mnookin was praised by campus and community leaders for her tenure, was specifically praised by how she kind of navigated and negotiated with the Republican-controlled legislature in Wisconsin. People particularly pointed out how the funding for the new engineering building got over the finish line despite some hiccups along the way. And she got bipartisan praise from state government officials. Governor Tony Evers said she, quote, has served our state's flagship university well, working to protect and advance critical research and world-class education to the benefit of students, faculty, and our entire state. And even Republican Assembly Speaker Robin Vos praised her for her commitment to students and said she had many great accomplishments during her tenure, such as bringing more free speech to campus and closing the division of DEI. Now, of course, if Robin Vos is praising you for doing those things, there's a sizable part of the campus community that is criticizing you for those exact same things. Mnookin really came under criticism by, kind of like you said, not being more of a forthright voice, Haley, for the UW-Madison, for working more behind the scenes, and thoughts that maybe she had compromised too much with the university's GOP critics and not standing up more forcefully against the Trump administration, including those curbs to free speech and DEI, and also budget cuts that led to layoffs at the university. And then, of course, a lot of that came to a head in 2024 with the pro-Palestinian protests on the UW campus, which ended with her sending law enforcement to dismantle a tent encampment on the Library Mall, leading to arrests and injuries. So I think for a lot of students, that would be the enduring legacy, maybe, of how her short tenure at the UW. And then, you have to wonder how Columbia looked at that and how that factored into her decision to hire her, because, as you said, Bianca, Columbia has had a rocky and eventful few years. Since Trump took office last year, Columbia's really been in the crosshairs of this administration and basically paid a $221 million settlement. It was for alleged anti-Semitism, although the university didn't have to admit any wrongdoing. But it basically unlocked like over $1 billion in federal funding that the government had frozen. So there was some thought of like, was this sort of like a bribe or a payoff in a way to sort of get that money flowing again? So Mnookin might be out of the frying pan into the fire at Columbia. The Cap Times reported that when she was meeting with faculty this week to talk about her decision, she was asked if the storm at Columbia had passed, and she responded by knocking on a wooden wall. So
not saying much.
Yep.
There she is. Maybe she's, moving in silence like lasagna.
They said, say less, and she said, bet. I mean, also, to give her credit, I think she was put into this position of UW chancellor, one, at a really hard time, and then was consistently dealt very, very hard scenarios where no matter what decision she was going to make, somebody, like a big group of somebodies, was going to be pissed off. And so I think she was good at navigating those really tenuous decisions. Now, whether or not the majority of the student population or the greater UW-Madison or just Madison area agreed with that, like, that's neither here nor there. But like, she was a very critical decision maker moving in silence. And, I do think that, like, while she wasn't a public figure, she did manage to secure a lot of money for new UW, both like funding projects and also like building projects. So I think she was probably not spending a lot of time with press, but spending a lot of time with those big donors. So, we're getting that new computer science building. We're getting Mortgage Hall. Like, this is happening. Yeah.
And so this leads to the question of what the next chancellor would look like. The Universities of Wisconsin President Jay Rothman said they're going to appoint an interim chancellor, I guess probably this summer in time for the fall semester, and then they'll start the search for a permanent replacement. I know students want to see them have more of a say in that process. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts about what you would like to see in the next chancellor?
Yeah, I think some longevity.
Yeah, right.
So it is such a thing to hire and recruit. You were talking about, Haley, the police chief in that process. We saw with Sean Barnes leaving. And now John Patterson, the fact that he has local ties, that seems to mean a lot to Madison. I wonder if that would make a difference for the chancellor. I do think national searches make sense in a lot of ways. And I have seen in major cities, someone from a different part of the country come and stay and make home there. But when you have folks that have different experiences and different in terms of like the cities that they like who they are, do you like Madison? Do you like Wisconsin? Like I'm someone who's moved away and I've seen just how different the pace of life can be in other spaces. And then coming back to Madison, like I have roots here. So not to make it about me, but, going to UW-Madison, I'm just thinking, what would make someone stay? I mean, if $1 million can't keep you, I don't know what can.
Bianca for chancellor.
Ooh,
Start it now.
Okay,
Start it now.
submit.
Yeah. You still have to do the podcast, though.
But deal.
My pitch, and hear me out, is Joe Gao, the former and now kind of disgraced chancellor of UW La Crosse. Talk about someone with ties to the state. He had served as chancellor since 2007 before ultimately being terminated back in 2023 after it came to light that he and his wife were running an adult entertainment website of their own. And you know what? I think we just ran our episode about Madison's kinky roots. Madison, UW-Madison with a freak at the top, I'm here for it. That's all I'm going to say. Joe, if you're out there, come talk to us on the podcast.
I don't think he should have been fired. That's, that was too much. But yeah, I don't know.
I feel like we could get him at a bargain, probably. Like,
I don't
probably
think
wouldn't
he'd
need
need
to
$1
go the full
million.
million. Yeah.
All right, well, the seed has been planted. We'll see what happens. But that was a lot of great context, and we've got more news to get into. But before we do, let's take a quick break. All right, we're back, and we're going to be talking about the protests that are happening. I mean, some happened at UW-Madison, so perfect transition.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Bianca, from crowds at the Capitol to the UW-Madison campus, Madisonians have been making their voices heard when it comes to speaking out against federal immigration enforcement, specifically happening in Minnesota, but also across the nation. Over the weekend, you guys may have seen hundreds of people gathered at the Wisconsin State Capitol building to protest ICE presence in the Twin Cities, and this was immediately following the killing of 37-year-old ICU nurse Alex Preddy by federal agents. Preddy himself was a Minneapolis resident, but his death hits pretty hard here in Wisconsin. He actually grew up in our state and was a Green Bay Preble High School graduate. I went to that protest, the one on Sunday, to get some photos and kind of just like get a vibe check to see what the general sentiment of folks is these days. And people seem pretty riled up. I think people were really looking to be in community on that day. In the terms of scale, it definitely wasn't the biggest protest that Madison has ever seen. But with that, I think the sub-zero temperatures kind of kept people at home, if we're being honest. But overall, it was very lively, full of people just feeling a lot, anger, sadness, fear, but also this sense of strength and power. Again, it was a really solid showing of community and an overall peaceful protest with very little police presence that I saw. And then just a few days ago, earlier this week, on the UW-Madison campus, students did the same. Hundreds, and some counts even say over 1,000, students gathered on Library Mall for a demonstration organized by the Students for a Democratic Society. And I know this is a lot to take in, and we've been discussing this situation a lot as a team. So I'm curious to hear from you guys and like how you're feeling about these recent protests and just the general state of the city right now. I think, again, there's just a lot of feelings out there. So how are you guys feeling?
Well, it's extremely heavy. And in terms of the protests, I don't think we would be Madison if we weren't seeing protesters about this. And as you said, Alex was a Wisconsinite. And I think, we're seeing a moment in which our rights are looking really tenuous. We're seeing footage of people losing their lives in what appears to be very unlawful ways, and it's alarming. And I worked on a show called 1A. It was about the First Amendment. We're press here. We are media. We're trying to tell stories. And the right to protest is a part of this country. And the protesting for our rights is very important. And it wouldn't be Madison if folks weren't out there, trying to stand up for what they think is right.
Yeah, and also the fact that Minneapolis is our neighbors and feels very close to home. We have ties to Minneapolis and people there, and a lot of people are frankly wondering, is Madison next? Is Milwaukee next? And so I think people are showing up, and will continue to do so to kind of be, as you say, make our voices heard and also kind of be ready for whatever comes next.
Yeah, I think people are sort of waiting with bated breath
Yeah.
to see what happens. I mean, all of us included, right? We're sitting here planning and trying to figure out how do we cover this. And, personally, I agree with you, Bianca. Like, it wouldn't be Madison if there wasn't a protest. It's really encouraging to me to see so many people just out in these streets and not just demonstrating, but like really willing to learn how to help each other. That's, I think, one thing that has separated this set of protests and demonstrations, I think, from past ones, is that people are really trying to put a little bit more skin in the game. And I think particularly like white Madisonians, of which there are many, are eager to jump into this and saying, like, yes, I will protect you. I will protect my neighbor. They want to be in. They want to do ICE watch, which is, again, great, but it needs to be done with care and knowledge. The folks over at Voces de la Frontera, which is an immigration advocacy nonprofit, they recently posted on Instagram that they were hearing about people reporting ICE sightings that were not actually accurate. So according to their post from Wednesday of this week, they say, quote, "There is no ICE presence related to immigration enforcement in Madison," unquote. And they really want to clarify that what most folks likely saw was like, yes, there were federal law enforcement, but they were engaged in non-immigration related activity. So this could be criminal activity. This could be something else. So the big takeaway here, again, is always confirm what you see before sharing it. It can do more harm rather than good. It's not helpful to scare people. And again, I know folks are looking for ways to get involved in supporting our immigrant communities and becoming active legal observers and whatnot. And the best way to do that is honestly to get connected with these groups like Voces, who are already doing the work, and sit down and listen to them when they are talking. I think a lot of people are questioning, like, where can I find these groups? How can I get involved? Online, at protests, social media, like those are really solid places to start. And in fact, today, January 30th, several groups in Madison are participating in the nationwide shutdown, solidarity walkout, rally, and march. This event is being organized by several local groups, including the Madison Socialist Alternative, the Young Democratic Socialists of America at UW-Madison, Jewish Voice for Peace in Madison, and Mecha de Dejob. There will be a student walkout and rally at Library Mall starting at 2 p.m. today, followed by a march to the Capitol and a rally. There's also plans for a larger statewide strike in May. So I think this is, again, really just sort of the start of action here in Madison. I'm curious to see and get your guys' thoughts about how much of like a total shutdown I think this is going to be. Personally, like, I'm not sure if this is going to be as big of a true shutdown of businesses here as we saw in Minnesota when they hosted a general strike just last week. You know, I've seen a few posts from businesses online saying that on January 30th, they're going to donate X amount of money per Y amount of things sold to immigration funds and mutual aids, et cetera, but not saying like we're closed this day, right? So is that better? Is that worse?
Well, one thing that's standing out to me is you guys probably saw Kara Swisher, the journalist, was on CityCast Twin Cities, which was really cool. She has a lot of audience, and she has a podcast called Pivot with Scott Galloway, and I follow Scott Galloway. He's very smart, and they both, really talk about the economy. And Scott Galloway has been saying you really should strike and go on a strike for like at least a week. We already know that the Twin Cities did do one day. I think it is an annoyance, but to kind of get a real impact, you need at least a week.
We're in a very different situation, obviously, Minneapolis. Those businesses that shut down last week were all small businesses who are already really hurting in Minneapolis because of the ICE presence there. And it wasn't, Target who shut down in solidarity. In Madison, I think it is more of a statement. Like I saw Working Draft is going to be closed today. And I think Madison Sourdough is closing early to encourage people to go to the rally this afternoon. So it's more like, making a statement, like you said, donating funds, showing support. But there's like a lot of ways if people don't go to the protests. I'm seeing where people can pitch in. Central Hispano has a immigrant defense fund that they've already set up that are distributing funds for legal resources for immigrants throughout the state. I saw there was an online training next week about becoming a legal observer in case it comes to that in Madison. So like you said, I think people are, the protests are galvanizing, inspiring, but I think people are ready to take it to that next step.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in here. And I think also the biggest takeaway for me is always people will make their voices heard and have the most impact with their dollar. And so these general strikes can be super impactful. And now, too, with another federal government shutdown looming, because of ICE funding, there's just there's a lot to think about in terms of following the money and in terms of getting people riled up. But again, just taking that back is that people are making their voices heard, whether out in these streets or supporting or not supporting specific businesses, and lawmakers are taking note.
Yeah, I also want to say, Haley, you pointed out that a lot of white folks want to be in community and come out. And I think this is a moment where everyone is recognizing that everyone has skin in the game, after what we've seen. Peretti's family has been speaking out about his life and his coworkers. He was a nurse, and I think, at least, speaking as a woman of color, it's really heartening to see people who are willing to put their skin in the game. And ICE is not here in the same degree as Twin Cities, but there is something to be said about staying vigilant. And I appreciate people, keeping a mind to, what they're seeing and reporting it, but also being thoughtful. So I'm glad we're talking about this, and it's a really big day. So on the topic of our First Amendment rights, protests, and democracy, our city's legal troubles around missing counting ballots is getting even more heated. Before we get into that news, let's take a quick break. All right, y'all. I've got this next story. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers has formally called out the city of Madison for one of its legal strategies in a lawsuit it's facing for having failed to count nearly 200 ballots in the 2024 election. If you remember that big city blowup, or as a reminder, the untallied ballots resulted in a Wisconsin Election Commission investigation into the city's handling of the election and harsh criticism from that bipartisan board, plus the then city clerk resigning. I mean, this is a huge story. Y'all remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the situation also resulted in a class action lawsuit brought forward by the liberal-leaning law firm Lawford on behalf of the disenfranchised voters for monetary damages for, quote, harm, suffering, and the deprivation of the right to vote. In terms of how disenfranchised they are, that is the question at hand. And the news is Governor Evers, as a WPR reporter Sarah Lear set up in a piece this week that we'll link in our show notes, is putting Madison on blast because Madison is arguing in this lawsuit that absentee voting is a, quote, privilege and not a, quote, right. Evers last Friday submitted an amicus brief to call out that argument that this line of defense could lead to, quote, absurd results in elections and make absentee voters, quote, second-class citizens. So this privilege versus a right for absentee ballots has been argued by Republicans in the state legislature before to restrict absentee voting. According to Lear's piece, sections of Wisconsin law do refer to absentee voting as a privilege. So what do y'all think about this strategy? Another huge story, and Governor's response to it, calling the city of Madison out. It's
not usual for Governor Evers to call out Madison like that. I mean, he's not the sort of person to call out anybody usually. He's usually pretty chill, but I guess the idea is it's the Madison attorneys were quoting from a law passed in the 80s that called absentee voting a privilege. But as Evers says, it does play right into the hands of people who want to restrict voting in Wisconsin and say, well, we can cut locations or hours for absentee voting, and it's not actually affecting their rights. So I sort of understand his perspective that there are ramifications when a blue city sort of throws in with that kind of defense.
I have a lot of feelings just about just the general validity of this lawsuit, but I hate the city's response so much. I think that, like, I'm glad that Evers stepped in. I think that this could set a very dangerous precedent that will only hurt and probably disenfranchise more people in the long run. Calling absentee voting a privilege when we have seen, in the heat of the pandemic, how critical this service is to our democracy is just, it's really not a good look for our city. Like, what are we doing here?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, the look the city is given is not cute. I also feel like Governor Evers coming in, it's like dad's angry.
Yeah.
We know why. We broke the jar and now we need a CYA, like cover your ass excuse that might be distasteful and antithetical to democracy. I saw in the WPR piece, they interviewed a staff attorney at the State Democracy Research Initiative, Brenna Gadar, one of your old colleagues, Rob, who said that there might be some conflating happening here around privilege for absentee voting. Quote, the legislature has, in these absentee voting statuses, made it clear that it considers absentee voting to be a privilege in that absentee voting as a method is not constitutionally required. You don't have to offer that as a method. And that the legislature can impose some additional procedures around absentee voting. That said, that privilege language does not necessarily mean that when you vote absentee, you don't have a right to have your vote counted. And the way the city was so proud of our absentee ballot boxes, okay, you know how much we hyped that up on the show, and I talked about, have you seen them? And we're putting art on them. We are pro-democracy. You can absentee vote. You can absentee vote. Actually, it's a privilege. So I know it's not funny. It's just like, this story feels so fraught.
Like, I understand Madison has attorneys. It's a lawsuit. It's a lot of money. You want to mount a vigorous legal defense. But sometimes with this whole story, I want to be just like, Madison, take the L.
Yeah.
You screwed up a year ago. They spent a month before they even notified people that this happened. Like, take your lumps and move on.
Yeah.
And promise to do better next time. Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought up those absentee voting boxes. I totally forgot about that. We were so like, we need to get these ballot boxes open. They're locked up. People can't use them. This is our right to use them. And now the city's like, but maybe actually all of this is a privilege and like, we don't need that. And that's okay.
And a couple more pieces of context. This suit is against the city, and it also names that Madison former clerk, Maribeth Whistlebell, and Deputy Clerk Jim Verbick as defendants. So there's a lot on the line. And also, it's the privilege versus a right argument that's being used is not the only legal strategy the city has or is employing. They're also just trying to get the case thrown out and arguing that the voters with uncounted ballots should have gone to the Election Commission with a complaint. That's another legal argument. So there are other ways. We'll see how this plays out. The city of Madison did put out a statement about the lawsuit saying that Madison believes that all forms of voting, including absentee voting, should be encouraged, promoted, and protected. So we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. We don't like this look, and we're in a tough spot. But you know what we do like the look of? Getting member shout-outs in our inbox. Y'all neighbors out there continue to be awesome and shouting folks out in the Madison community. We've got some shout-outs to give. So, Rob, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I love how many different kinds of shout-outs we get. Sometimes it's a business, sometimes it's a nonprofit. Mine is just a person. Ben R. is shouting out, quote, my friend Shauna Youngdahl, who has been leading fun and welcoming femme-identifying improv jams with Amalgam Improv. Shauna is helping to diversify the improv community in Madison.
I adore that. Yeah.
Yay, Shauna.
Yeah, I've actually been on a panel, a comedy type panel with her on Several Questions with Nate Chappell. He's got that podcast. And Shauna is the loveliest. Like, she has the best energy. And we love diversifying all of our scenes, particularly comedy.
Yeah, I hear improv is good for anybody, right?
Yeah, y'all are pointing me out here. So I did take an improv class here in Madison last year at this point, and I did sign up for another. It's very scary. It's a scary thing to do.
Good for you.
But it's good for your brain, and I'm trying to be better on the podcast for you guys listening. We have a lot of fun. The next shout out is from Lisa C. She is shouting out the Transformation Center is the West Side's gym. If you're looking for a supportive community to get fit and find connection with great trainers and new friends, the Transformation Center is for you. Okay.
I love that.
Check it out.
We're gym girlies out here at CityCast Madison. And our last shout out here comes from Andy A., who says, quote, I volunteer at the Arts and Literature Laboratory, so I'm biased, but I often think about how lucky we are to have it in Madison. There's always something hip happening there. Have you visited yet? Check it out. And as we are recording this over here at Starting Block, we are right across the street from the Arts and Lit Lab. We love the Arts and Lit Lab. In fact, they have been a sponsor of this show. We should mention that. But our members shout things out on their own, and we love to see it. And we are so lucky to have them.
So lucky. Those are our buddies. So shout out to Good Work in Madison. And if you out there listening want to give your own shout out, you can. Just head to membership.citycast.fm for more information. Become a neighbor. And for all of our current neighbors, keep sending these in because they're really fun and we love sharing them on the Friday News Roundup. And your support helps our team of local journalists continue to tell Madison's stories. Okay, we've got one last exciting story to share with you this week. Rob, what's going on in our restaurant scene?
Yeah, it's been a week in Madison, which means there's a lot of restaurant news. There always is. We did have one piece of sad news that Kavanaugh's Esquire Club, which has been in business in Madison on the north side for nearly 80 years, has closed following the death of its longtime owner, John Kavanaugh. So that's truly the end of an era. On the good news was another end of an era may not be ending after all. I'm talking about Himmel Truly on State Street, which closed January 1st after like nearly 40 years. But the owner's grandson says he's going to reopen the restaurant with a very similar menu of dishes from Nepal. He's going to rehire many of the same employees. The one difference is that the name will be slightly different. It will be Humali Chulo. And the idea is that he wanted to honor his grandparents' legacy by not just having the same name, but keep it slightly different. So it was kind of out of respect, which I think is kind of a cool thing.
I just have to say, too, like, this man, he is so sweet. Like, this is the guy who also runs the Globe and the new Asherwad over on State Street as well, and Triangle Market. As someone who used to live on State Street and frequent the Triangle Market, he has seen me at my worst.
Yep,
and
iconic.
Always greeted with a smile and a gentle hello. I'm really excited for this. I hope people are also really excited too.
I think people are. People were already mourning the loss of what was the first Nepalese restaurant in the United States, I heard, or something full time. Yeah. So
I can't say I could do with a little less whiplash. The Esquire Club. I had plans to the Esquire Club literally for today, and then we had to cancel them. And my heart just sank for Himmel Truly. So for all, and we already know, we've been reporting, there are a few different businesses that have been like, sorry, we've got to go. JK, is this like a thing? Like, please. And
I mean, I think it just points out to the restaurant industry, it's a tough one. And
True.
You never know.
Yeah.
The winds change so fast.
That's so true.
yeah, like Baraka was going to close, and then people had the groundswell of support. So it sounds like they're doing okay. So yeah, it's a lot of drama. One quick other restaurant news update also on State Street is that MOMOCA, the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art, is going to get its own restaurant from chef and Ho-Chunk Nation advocate Elena Terry. It's going to be called Tall Grass. It's going to be in that first floor space where the gift shop used to be, if you know that. Great spot right on State Street, and will probably open this summer.
I'm super excited for this one. Like, I think it is far past due for us to have someone with Indigenous roots opening a restaurant here, opening a cafe, just having more presence here in Madison. I'm super, super stoked. Would love to get Chef Elena on the podcast. If you're listening, come talk to us. I'm really excited.
Yes, I'm super excited. I mean, that's my old stomping grounds. I used to like sit right next to that space and watch people like, don't touch the art. And now you can go eat. But the exciting part is Elena Terry, because I cannot agree with you more, Haley. It's time to see someone so beautiful and talented coming through and more things to light up State Street. It's really exciting.
Also, too, you know, like she is a powerhouse in herself. Like she's had appearances on Top Chef, on Chopped, Barbecue Brawl. Like she is out there doing the thing and like has made a name for herself. And again, we are so lucky that she's putting down some roots here in Madison.
And I like the term roots with tall grass.
Yeah.
This has been a very good Friday News Roundup. Thank you both. And Jade Isiri Ramos, our producer, who is also in the room that you guys don't hear from, but is killing it. Thank you guys for rounding up the news. Haley Sperling, see you later.
See ya.
And Rob Thomas, thanks so much.
Thanks, Bianca.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. We're produced by Jade Isiri Ramos with help this week from Elizabeth Kama and Matthew Rogers. Haley Sperling is our executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Additional music by Wendy Marchini, courtesy of Epidemic Sound. Rob Thomas is our newsletter editor. You can get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. Don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with someone who could be UW's next chancellor? All right, see you back here Monday morning with more news from around the city. Until then, thanks for listening and have a great, safe weekend.